Right now, crews are near the town of Greer battling the Greer fire, which officials estimate has burned more than 3,500 acres, destroyed multiple structures, and has caused the entire town of Greer to be evacuated.
Unfortunately, the conditions are just perfect for a wildfire. It's dry. It is really windy, as you'll see in just a second when we go to Chase Go Lightly. And of course, there's a lot of vegetation available for these flames. An evacuation shelter is being opened at the Round Valley Dome in Eager, and both lanes of State Route 260 and the southbound lanes of 373 are closed right now.
And if you're not familiar with the area, here's a look at a map showing you exactly where the Greer fire is burning. It's about 4 hours northeast of the valley up in the White Mountains.
Thanks for joining us for our continued wildfire coverage on this special edition of 12 News on 12 Plus. I'm Mark Curtis.
And I'm Kadiba Devine. We have team coverage of the Greer fire. And to start our coverage, 12 News journalist Chase Go Lightly is joining us now live from Apache County. And Chase, have crews made any progress on getting this fire under control?
It doesn't appear so, Karibe. Mark, if anything, Mother Nature has really hindered their ability to battle this fire. Right now, we are on the westernmost side of Eager, right at the 261-260 junction. It's the furthest we can go before DPS has actually blocked the road. This is the road that leads to Show Low, that leads to Greer, and you can see all that smoke that is going. And I don't know if you'll be able to see from our camera, but just how strong those winds are. You can see just how fast that wind is pushing the smoke into the northeastern direction, and it really does stretch on for miles. I mean, driving into Eager, we could see the smoke about 70 miles out. Coming in from Show Low, we had to take the 60. Now, the latest information that we have from state officials regarding this fire is, as you mentioned, it's at about 3,500 acres and growing. You have about 100 fire personnel currently battling this fire from the ground. We also received some viewer video from those living in this part of town, some having to be evacuated. Again, those in Greer and South Fork having to leave their homes. We're told that homes and structures have been destroyed. At this time, we do not have an exact number of how many were destroyed. And that's because fire officials are really just focused on battling this fire. Now, as I mentioned, you have about 100 personnel battling this fire from the ground. Earlier, you did have large air tankers attacking from above, but because of those strong winds, all aircraft had to be grounded. We also know that once the sun starts to go down and it gets dark, fire officials won't launch any additional aircraft into the air, even if those winds do calm down. They just say it's too dangerous to be flying over the fire when the sun is down. Now, as for just kind of the plans of moving forward, you have a new incident command team moving in at 8 o'clock that will be going after this thing well into the night. We also, again, the evacuations for Greer and South Fork. In western Eager, everyone west of River Road to where we are now are on preset evacuation notice. That's where that's where they're told, hey, you might have to leave at a moment's notice. We also learned that Eager and the town of Springville have declared state of emergencies, meaning that there's no burning, no smoking outdoors. We also learned that Round Valley Unified School District has canceled in-person classes for tomorrow and will instead switch to online learning for student and staff safety. And again, just with these winds, with how fast they're moving, the only way to go after this thing is from the ground, and we know that fire crews are doing the best they can. We also know that Governor Hobbs is trying to get some federal assistance to attack this fire. We're still waiting for an update in regards to that, and there's still just really a lot of information that we're still waiting to learn from fire officials. Again, how many structures have been destroyed, the current size of the acreage. The last update that we got, I believe, was about close to an hour ago, saying that it was 3,500 acres, and we are seeing people in the pre-evacuation notice getting in their cars and just leaving. We've seen a couple people with trailers filled with horses leaving as well. We were told that the rodeo grounds here is open to those who do have large animals or RVs. If you are deciding to pack everything up and take your RV, there are places for you to go. I also want to mention, like you said, the vegetation, as we can also kind of just pan over here. You're talking about the vegetation. You can just see how dried out it is, and This right here is going all the way down toward Greer, so there is a lot to burn out here. And the thing with the winds, and this is something that we've covered in previous fires, because of those strong winds, with the embers of the fire, those can get scooped right up and be carried hundreds of yards away and create new spot fires that, again, continue to grow. So just a lot really going on here, and it looks like we're seeing some sheriffs, Apache County Sheriff's deputies, going into the Greer area right now, maybe trying to make contact with folks about evacuations in this area. But again, it's just still a very active situation here, and we're still trying to learn the latest of what the battle is going to look like going into tonight. But hopefully this wind will let up, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Chase, you drove up there earlier today as soon as we heard about the fire. Tell us about what your drive was like going up there on the 60 and where you finally had to pull over, where the road shuts down, because I know there are a lot of folks down here in the valley that are watching this that have second homes up there, and Greer and Eager and Springerville. Right. What are they going to be dealing with?
So when you travel in, we took the route through Payson, I believe through Heber, and then up to Show Low. From Show Low, you can either go left to the 60. That's the route that we took. That's the route that's open. From there, you will go north of Greer and then into the north side of Eager. The road that's closed is if you were to take a right at Show Low. That's the 260. That's this road right here. That's where they have it blocked off in both directions once you get into the town of Greer. So if you are ones that, have homes in the Greer area or South Fork, you won't be able to get in because, again, they have it all blocked off. And to my knowledge, they're not letting anyone in there to see if their home is still up, if they're able to go back in and get those things. I mean, you could always drive down and try to talk with DPS, but just from covering previous fires, they're really not going to let anyone back in just because of the danger, because of those winds, and just because this fire is so out of control. They don't want to risk letting people back in to maybe try to grab some belongings because, again, they won't know if your home has been destroyed or if that fire can turn and move in your direction. So if you do have a home in this area, maybe you have some neighbors that decide to stay, because we also know covering there's fires, even when people are told to be under evacuation and leave, some people just decide to stay. Some people just decide that they're going to try to do their own fire mitigation and stay with their home, and that happens every time. So you can always try to reach out to people there, but to my knowledge, they're really not going to let anyone into that area.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, Chase. I mean, I see a lot of cars behind you, presumably heading out. Have you heard from authorities about people who have said that they are not going to evacuate?
We haven't heard at that point. I know from the law enforcement perspective, they're just going on the doors, they're knocking, and they're telling you, hey, you have to get out. They've also told people on preset evacuation notice, like from this area right here, this intersection right here, all the way to the western part of Eager, where you have a bunch of homes, you have businesses, you have grocery stores, gas stations. They already went door to door telling them, hey, you're not evacuated, but you got to get that go bag ready. You got to get everything packed up. If you have family photos or special belongings you want to take with, be sure to have that packed up, because the next time we come to your door and knock on it, that will probably be us telling you that you need to evacuate. But as far as authorities telling us if anyone has decided to stay there, we have not received that information yet. But we all know that, law enforcement, if you're in that evacuation zone, law enforcement is going to tell you to not stay, that the safest thing to do is to just grab what you can within an arm's reach and get out of there.
Yeah, Chase Golightly reporting live for us from the fire lines up in the high country where this wildfire has broken out. And, Chase, thank you. You always wonder what you would do if you were told suddenly what would you put in your go bag?
I know.
And how would you stay and fight? Would you try to, as some of these people do, or would you listen to the evacuation?
I know. It makes you think about, being prepared for something like this.
Right.
And of course, I think when people live in those kinds of areas, they're probably a little bit more prepared, say, than some of us who live here in the urban areas. Let's hope. But Lindsay, we know that heat is another factor when it comes to the difficulty of fighting these wildfires. We saw Chase with a beanie on and a jacket. So are temperatures maybe just at least one positive thing right now about the weather?
I would say that is one of the positives. We're in the 50s and 60s around Greer right now. So temperatures, at least it's not 100 degrees. However, that being said, the winds are really not going to improve much at all through this evening and overnight, and they will stay brisk through through the day tomorrow. We won't see an improvement in our winds until Thursday, and that is going to be the main factor to help firefighters battle this fire. So windy conditions expected again tonight and tomorrow. We're talking gusts in the 40 to 50 mile per hour range, and the result of that is an increased fire risk. You're just going to have to stay on top of the forecast because things like this can change very quickly. With gusts like that, it can blow embers and start brand new fires upwind. So be sure to get updates, whether they be on your phone, radio, or television consistently, at least through the next 24 hours while these winds remain very brisk. 38-mile-an-hour gusts right now in Greer. That's actually a slight improvement. 36 in Show Low. But again, you can expect these gusts to persist overnight. Greer and much of eastern and southeastern Arizona is in a critical fire danger for the rest of today. As we head into tomorrow, it's still going to be elevated. That's because relative humidity is in the 10 to 15% range, and those gusts expected to continue. On the fire lines for the rest of tonight, temperatures generally falling through the 60s into about 58 degrees at 9 p.m. Skies are going to remain clear outside of the smoke. Then looking ahead to tomorrow, we're looking at windy conditions to persist. Even at 8 a.m., those winds sustained from the southwest at 25 miles per hour. We'll still see those gusts between 40 and 50 all throughout the morning and into the afternoon. No wet weather expected. This is going to be a dry system, just picking up our winds and lowering the relative humidity. Out near Show Low and Greer, we're in the 7 to 9 range out of 10 for fire danger today. This is going to continue for the rest of today and even tomorrow. Not a huge improvement because those winds are going to remain brisk. The relative humidity will remain low. At about 11 a.m. tomorrow, we're still a 6 out of 10 across eastern Arizona. That's where the fire risk will be the greatest across the state. As far as our hour-by-hour forecast for winds, notice Greer and Eager, 7 p.m. right now in the 40 to 45 mile per hour range. Look at what happens tomorrow morning. It picks right back up again, close to 60 mile per hour wind gusts at 9 a.m. tomorrow. And this extends back toward McCarney and as well as Show Low, and it will blow pretty brisk through the course of the afternoon. Relative humidity, 10 to 15% right now through the overnight and into the day tomorrow. So we won't see an improvement there. No rain expected, unfortunately. Here's a look at our future gusts. 11 p.m. tonight, still close to 40 mile per hour gusts around Greer. As we head into the day tomorrow, you can see those oranges, reds, and purples. That's the windiest part of the state right there, far eastern Arizona. This is noon, and then you'll see a big improvement by the time we head into Thursday. We're talking a 10 to 20 mile an hour breeze. Very normal for this time of year. Considering we're in spring, we typically see windier conditions during the spring months. As far as what it would take to end our drought, because our drought undoubtedly has worsened over the last couple months. Out near Greer and parts of eastern Arizona, you need anywhere from 6 to 11 inches of rain to get rid of the drought. So we have very, very dry conditions right now across the state. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's going to get any better anytime soon. We have a couple sprinkles in the forecast for early next week, but it is not going to really make a big impact on some of those numbers that you're seeing there. Mark and Caribe.
All right, Lens, thanks. And we've got some important information to pass on that just came into us. We told you earlier about the evacuation center that had been set up at the Round Valley Dome in Eager. That has now closed. They are moving people to St. John's High School. So if you're watching us in the areas that are affected by this latest wildfire and you've decided not to leave your home, that will be your go-to point if things get bad, is St. John's High School. Do not go to the Round Valley Dome. That has been closed.
All right, we want to continue our coverage of this Greer fire. We're joined on the phone now by Tiffany Davila from the Arizona Department of Forestry and Fire Management. Tiffany, thanks so much for joining us on the phone. First, let's start with giving us a sense of the scope of the fire that we're dealing with right now.
Well, at this time, the fire is about 4,000 acres. It is moving northeast toward the community of South Fork. It did already hit the Wildfire scar above the South Fork area. So there is some of the Wildfire burn scar up in there, but the fire already impacted that area. We have about 150 resources, or personnel, I should say, that are currently on the fire line and engaged. We did order some heavy aircraft earlier on, but however, due to those high winds, we had to ground that aircraft. At one point around noon, we hit about 65 miles per hour with a wind gust. So this really is a complete wind-driven fire. We have additional equipment and personnel on order and heading up this way right now. We've got task forces of engines. And then we have mutual aid from around the state coming up to help backfill the local fire departments that are actively engaged in their own communities.
Tiffany, you've been doing this long enough to answer this question. When you look at the scope of what this fire is with the winds and the inability for planes to fly and drop fire retardant, and then you add in the fuels and how dry it's been, how bad a situation is this?
It's a really challenging fire. I mean, the red flag warnings, the warm and dry conditions, the drought-stricken fuel, the wind, again, is probably the biggest factor in this fire. Not being able to fly aircraft to get that air support because some of this fire is hung up in the bluffs, which is an inaccessible terrain. So we can't get resources in there. That's where we would utilize that aircraft. So this fire has definitely been a challenge since it started. Unfortunately, we did lose some structures in the town of Greer. But there's a lot of work to be done, but we do have a lot of resources up here and heavily engaged.
Yeah, and Tiffany, knowing that you have some, limiting factors once the sun goes down and it's dark and, of course, the winds and all of that. So what is your goal tonight as far as getting this fire under control?
Well, we want to get these crews out there and start putting line in, but the problem is these winds are pushing the fire so hard. We need to make sure we've got our number one priority as public and firefighter safety. So we don't want to actively engage going direct or indirect along the fire's edge if we're going to put somebody in harm's way. But we are actively engaged at the moment. They're trying to get line in, and we're going to keep working throughout the night to start trying to get some progress on this fire.
Tiffany, as we speak right now at 7:16, there are probably some folks up in that area that are watching us that decided not to evacuate. And by the way, St. John's High School is where you want to go if you want to evacuate. What message would you send to those who've decided not to evacuate?
You know, it's very important for people to listen and heed the advice of our law enforcement and our first responders. This is a very fluid situation. It's wind-driven again. If the wind shifts at any time, this fire could shift directions. So very fluid situation. We are asking people to please take the advice of law enforcement when they're asking you to evacuate. If there's an emergency situation, we now have to put our firefighters back into those communities to get people out that decided to stay behind.
And any update for folks who have livestock, horses, things like that they want to get out of harm's way?
I know there was an area in Eager that was taking livestock, but I don't have good information on that at this time. The Apache County Sheriff's Office and the Apache County Office of Emergency Management is handling all of the evacuation and pre-evacuation statuses, along with all of the shelter information.
All right, we'll check on that and we'll get that, pass that information on to our viewers.
And Tiffany, I know right now the goal is getting this fire under control, but do you have any idea of how the fire started and the point where it started?
Not at this time. It is under investigation, but, again, it started on private property in Greer. We did lose some structures in Greer, but like I said, right now, crews are working to protect structures, to protect the public, and, we need to make sure we've got the safety of our firefighters. I don't, at this time, think they've had time to go back into Greer to assess any damage.
All right, Tiffany Davila, thank you for your expertise and insight on this fire. I have a feeling we're going to be talking to you again in the coming days. Appreciate your time. It could be bad. It really could with these winds if they don't lie down. The evacuations caused by the Greer fire causing some really chaotic moments for a lot of people who had to gather their things and leave their homes.
Yeah, it sounds like a very scary situation.
Yeah.
12 News journalist Sean Rice spoke with one person who lives in the area this afternoon. And Sean, he's been a longtime resident of Eager.
Yeah.
And of course, he hopes that, you know, these flames don't come anywhere near his home. But as we've seen the conditions, it's pretty scary out there.
It is. And he was scared. His name's Jerry Porter. He's lived in Eager for 40 years. So he's been through multiple major wildfires there in that area. Thankfully, this one's about 8 to 10 miles where it started, away from his home. He feels as though even though those smoke plumes were coming right across his backyard, that it may stay away from his home. But this is something that he's experienced before. Certainly feels for the people in Greer, especially those who have had their structures completely destroyed. Take a look at this photo from the Arizona Department of Forestry and Fire Management. We're told this was taken just after 10 a.m., right when they were able to get an aircraft in the air before they had to ground all of their aircraft. It shows the point right where that fire started. You see a road that goes right through there. It's just to the left where that fire started on private property. Within minutes, I'm told, it became a massive wildfire threatening the entire town. This video shows flames lighting vegetation on fire on the ground. I'm told Greer is mainly a community with wooded cabins, some vacation homes in that area, but it's right in line with where those flames were. It was heading northeast towards Eager. It has been throughout this evening, and that's where Jerry lives. Take a listen to a part of our conversation this afternoon, about a couple hours after this fire started, as he watched those massive smoke plumes head his way.
Is it something you guys are kind of keenly aware of as a possibility, especially on red flag days like today? Is this something that's kind of talked about and known to be aware?
Yeah, everybody's always watching the mountains behind us, watching for smoke or, wherever it might be coming from. But especially it's been so dry and we didn't have a whole lot of snow over the winter. So we haven't had any rains to speak of, maybe a couple of light showers in the last week, but not enough to do anything.
Yeah. And you said the evacuees are coming your way. So that may be a good sign for Eager, would you say?
Yeah. Yes, that is.
Okay. And
I understand they just closed the Highway 260 coming from Pine Top to Eager in both directions.
Yeah. Describe Greer for me. For folks who are unfamiliar with Greer, is it a small town? You would say quaint. How would you describe Greer?
I'd say perfectly what you just said, a small, quaint town, a lot of vacation homes, summer homes. There is one road in and one way out. So you're kind of trapped when you get in there. And this fire started more on the north end of Greer, which is the way out. So very easily, some people could get trapped in there. But yeah, it's a quaint little town. Lots of big log homes and lots of expensive homes. Molly Butler Lodge is certainly a landmark in Arizona. It is there. The fire started just a couple of miles from there. So yeah, it's a beautiful little town.
Yeah, you just feel for the people that live there in that area, especially a major wildfire like this. Now, all evacuees, as you mentioned, St. John's High School was previously Round Valley Dome. That's since been closed. Important information. If you do need to evacuate, you live in Eager, and you eventually get those go alerts, because right now they're on set status. I'm told southwest part of Eager is all on set status, but be ready because that's the way it's going.
You know, I'm glad you said that because it's something we talk about all the time, assuming everyone knows the ready, set, go status.
Right.
But could you just fill our viewers in on what that is?
Yeah. I mean, it's all about where the fire is in relation to where you're living. Obviously, go means evacuate. It means leave immediately, gather your pets if you have them, but gather really what's in arm's distance immediately that you can grab. Ready and set, very similarly, are, the fire is potentially threatening your area, but law enforcement is not going door to door to say leave immediately. That is just a be aware. Keep a watch of social media channels related to law enforcement and first responders. And if you see that status turn from ready to set, to go, you have to immediately leave. Yeah. So it's kind of a progress there.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to know that this could happen, but when it actually starts happening, different story, and, you know, very unsettling, and we just hope the best for them.
Yeah. And I hope this is not a snapshot and a preview of what we're in for this summer.
Yeah, what could come.
But, you know, Arizona does burn every summer.
It does.
All right, Sean, thanks. Let's turn to the other wildfires burning in Arizona right now, starting with the Bryce fire. This one is burning about 3 miles west of the town of Pima in Graham County. The Bryce fire has burned more than 3,100 acres and is 29% contained. The Arizona Department of Forestry and Fire Management says that almost 300 fire personnel have been assigned to fight this. It is human-caused. The Bryce fire started on May 7th, and crews had it as much as 80% contained before these high winds kicked in to help it blow up again. The Department of Forestry says multiple power lines and gas lines have been damaged, but no structures, thankfully, have been destroyed.
All right, now let's head over to the Coyote Fire, which is burning about 4 miles northeast of Springerville in Apache County. According to the Arizona Department of Forestry and Fire Management, the Coyote Fire has burned almost 1,300 acres and is now 25% contained. This fire was sparked on Sunday by a structure fire that later spread to the wildland. The Department of Forestry is saying that crews are on the mop-up duty right now and patrolling the edges of the fire as it continues to smolder. There's no word on if any structures have been destroyed by the Coyote Fire.
Well, now we want to get back to meteorologist Lindsay Riley. And of course, Lindsay, the weather always plays a huge role in these wildfires and whether firefighters can get the upper hand or not. But in this case, the winds are so fierce up there that they can't even fly these planes that drop the fire retardant and water.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it doesn't look like we may get a window for those planes to go up and fight the fire because the winds are going to remain very brisk tonight and all day tomorrow. Still looking at those 40 to 50 mile per hour gusts through the overnight and all day on Wednesday. Here's the current wind gusts right now. And as you can see, windiest part of the state from Flagstaff to Winslow, Window Rock down through Greer. We're in the 38 to 41 mile per hour wind gust range. Those winds not going to die down after sunset tonight. Here's a look at those fire lines up in Eager near the Coyote Fire. Notice the winds will remain sustained anywhere from about 25 to 35 miles per hour. And then, of course, we're seeing higher gusts. And then skies clear, relative humidity is extremely low through the overnight. And then down in Graham County near the Bryce Fire, temperatures a little bit warmer there, but not as hot as what we would see with a fire near Phoenix. So we're in the 70s through the overnight. Winds not as bad around Graham County there, but again, we are expecting breezy conditions, some gusty winds from time to time. Much of Arizona is in a critical fire danger from Flagstaff to Show Low, the White Mountains, and all of southeastern Arizona for the rest of today. Those gusts, here's a look at 11 o'clock tonight. It is still brisk. Early tomorrow morning, windy conditions. You can see the purples and reds for eastern Arizona. That's where it's going to be the windiest across the state. And then finally, by the time we get toward Thursday, these winds will start to die down. So that should help firefighting efforts later in the week. But here's a look at our current drought. Anywhere in red, that is an extreme drought. That also includes places like the White Mountains and down near Graham County, Safford, Phoenix. So we've been extremely dry. A lot of our state needs anywhere from 6 to 11 inches of rainfall just to get us out of the drought. And unfortunately, we don't have much of any rain in the forecast. Maybe a sprinkle early next week, but no major rainfall. So the drought could worsen over the next couple of months, but we will continue to monitor those fire conditions up in the high country over the next few hours. Mark and Caribe.
All right, Linz, thanks. And as these fires continue to burn, we wanted to let you know Stage 2 fire restrictions are now in effect for southeastern Arizona. What does it mean? It means no campfires, no outside smoking, no target shooting, and no fireworks.
You're also not allowed to use any kind of charcoal, coal, or elevated grill, including on campgrounds. Liquid or gas stoves are okay. Now, these rules apply on state, federal, and some tribal lands within Cochise, Graham, Greenlee, Pima, Pinal, and Santa Cruz counties.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us for this special wildfire edition of 12 News on 12 Plus. But you can find the latest on information on all of these fires continuing throughout the night by going to 12news.com.
And of course, we will have continued coverage on the Greer, Bryce, and Coyote fires back on air on 12 News tonight. So be sure to join us then.
And you can also find the latest coverage right here on 12 Plus. Thanks for putting your trust in us. Have a good night and stay safe.